Hello, Bre. How are you?
Hello, Nathan Johnson. I am well, yourself.
I am doing very good. I'm actually excited to have you on because number one, I always love talking to you, but number two, this is a different platform for us to actually maybe for me to ask some additional questions that I never really get to ask you in person. So, who are you and what do you do, Miss Bre Johnson?
Well, my full name is Brianna Nicole Johnson. I go by Bria for friends, so I guess we're friends. And for those that don't know, we're also married, so there's that. I am a mother of three small children, 2, 4, 6. I'm married to an incredible husband whose name is, well, we'll leave that to be known. And I am a tech leader by day and a small business entrepreneur by night.
I love it. Yes. And some refer to you as Superwoman. So I think everything you shared is great. And you are a Superwoman and you're a fantastic mother and spouse. But more so than anything else, and one of the reasons that I actually fell in love with you is your ability to connect with other people, which is why I wanted to kick this off for our first session because I'm sure there's going to be more. But you have something very special about you, and obviously I've shared this with you before. We've talked about this a few times, but I cannot think of a better example of somebody who has a presence about them, has an aura that when they walk into the room, everybody pays attention. And I know I'm a little bit biased because you are my spouse, but I think even at this point in this age and the number of connections that you have, you recognize your ability to do that. So I wanted to talk about that today because I believe it's a learned skill, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it. And you have taught me so much along the way in our, 18 years of marriage. And I think it's just incredible that you're able to do that with such high capacity. So can you talk about first and foremost when you walk into a room, when you think about what you're going to do into that room, how do you start connecting with people? Is there something that you're thinking about before you go in? Are you prepping before you walk in? Are you just there and you're present and you want to build those relationships?
Well, the first thing I would say is you could just walk into a room with antlers on your head and make sure you're very noticeable so people want to come talk to you. But if you don't have antlers, then yes, I think this is something that I have learned through many years of being in sales because, again, we are here and in the business to connect with people, at least those that are incredible in their craft. It's like, great, just take one customer, break that down. How many people are reaching out to them a day? If you're at a joint event, at a conference, how many people, right, are vying for the attention, let's say, of one executive? And I think along my journey and history in the world of sales, it has taught me a lot. And the first thing that I would mention to separate others and what I try to do is be authentically curious. And I have to put those two words together because it's one thing to just quickly breeze by questions like almost surface level. I think people immediately fill that out. Like, are you curious for the sake of just trying to get to know me to move on to the next versus are you really intentionally asking questions and authentically showing yourself as well? And I think we oftentimes forget that as we're trying to connect with people, and I'm really keeping this in the sales context that we're putting them in a different realm. When at the end of the day, I think we've all heard this that we all are humans. And one of the things that make us humans is the need, desire, and want to be connected. And so when we kind of shed down the layers and we show up in a way where we feel that we're there to truly learn about them, learn about their intrinsic motivators, learn what is troublesome to them, learn some human things. Like I actually, a lot of the times right now, test my team because we're in a hyperscale tech company where we're trying to move incredibly fast. And so Sometimes though, I'm observing my team where they're just wanting to go straight into business.
Mhm.
And the one thing that I'm saying is we sometimes have to slow down to speed up. And
Mhm.
how are we slowing down? That is by connecting on a human level.
Mhm.
Because again, I think the more virtual meetings we have, the more we're being nullified to digital experiences. That almost translates to the outside world, where
Mhm.
we're forgetting to just connect as people that should want to engage and learn about one another versus going straight for the jugular and trying to get business done and get it done fast.
Mhm.
So, in all of my observations, I think that people have that innate sense to weed out, are you here to like get to know me truly?
Mhm.
And are we bringing those human elements back that are sometimes going off by the wayside? And how curious are you to get to know me versus your agenda, like shoving it down my throat and weaseling it in versus all right, like it might take five more meetings until you get to the point that you wanted to, but
Mhm.
people, they see that and they sense that and feel that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is I think, when I reflect on our relationship and as I've observed you kind of work rooms, if you will, it's not, you never approach things in a salesy way, right? You really do just go in and you're like, ooh, I wonder who's here. And you just kind of strike up a conversation. Is that I think you're a natural extrovert, of course, but do you think that that has been a learned skill in your sales career, or is that something that you have just kind of adopted along the way as you've navigated your professional and personal networks?
If I were to reflect back, I actually remember my mom challenging me when I was a young kid to go ask for what I wanted, even though I did not want to do that at all. It might
Mhm.
have been something like probably back in the day we were like at a Subway and they didn't put pickles on my sandwich. And instead of being like, hey, mom, can you go do that for me? I still remember so many times my mom would say, no,
Mhm.
if you want that, you need to go up there and have a conversation and ask what you want. So I remember a lot of resistance to interacting with people because actually, I think right in my own context, my own environment, I'm a louder, energetic person, that doesn't shy away from spotlight
Mhm.
in my own environment.
Mhm.
But as a kid, actually, I had to be forced to go do that and find that and be comfortable with being uncomfortable because I did not want to go interact with people that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to reflect back of very, very pointed times. I remember my mom encouraging slash forcing me to go do those things.
Mhm.
And then I think over time, of course, just like anything in life that you're trying to build a skill around, the more at bats you have, the more comfortable you get. And
Mhm.
so I just remember, of course, going to those first executive meetings, like they're going to eat me alive. I'm like sitting in a boardroom with a bunch of people that are like 20, 30 years my senior and then I just again distilled all of that nervousness and remembered like, okay, I'm here actually to help them, but I'm also here to connect with them. I'm here
Mhm.
to differentiate myself. And my differentiator that again, I do think is more of a learned skill is that people know that I want to truly understand them like as a whole
Mhm.
because I also think that once we understand people and who they are at their core, that of course translates into our professional lives, like how they tick and how they work and what's going to fly and what's going to set them off. So
Yeah.
the long answer is I didn't start that way. Even in the beginning, I still felt incredibly uncomfortable. And as over time, 20 years later, you start working and seeing like okay I can do this and I know how to do this and I'm just gonna stop there. At the end of the day we are all just like people trying to make it right in this world and
Mhm.
trying to set a path for ourselves. And I think a lot of times people just want to breeze over that and they
Mhm.
only have their agenda truly, right? Like that's all they can focus on. But if we just strip all of that down, like there's something beautiful that happens when people feel that they are heard and understood and seen.
Yeah. And There's two things as you were speaking that really come to mind that you do in particular well that at least work for me that I observe continuously. One of those is eye contact because you do it so well. And quite frankly, when you and I first got together, it was a little frightening because you were always looking at me in the eyes and I wasn't that confident and I would always look away. And it was just something that I always noticed about you. So I want to ask you about that. But then second, the humorous part of it. You are a natural jokester, and this is why I say usually I think of you as an extrovert because you use humor to, I think, break down barriers. Not everybody is humorous, and I think the humor is, can crack people a little bit. It opens them up. It makes them feel a little bit comfortable. But I want to talk about that aspect for, those that may not be as joking as you in professional environments, may not have that comfortability where that comes from what people can really do. So let's first talk about the eye contact and then we'll move to that second question.
Yes. So eye contact. I think a few different things led me to understand the importance of it. And one of those, honestly, stemmed back to an eighth grade speech class. The first time I learned about nonverbal cues and how incredibly powerful and compelling they could be.
Mhm.
I am a hand talker. Luckily, you can't see my hands down here, but they're doing this. No, I'm just joking. But in eighth grade, I remember my first speech that I gave, I was like too animated. It was like, like, where's distracting? And
Mhm.
I thought, right, like in speech class, we were learning about how impactful movement is when we're sharing and speaking. That was just one facet, right? Then there's tonation, there's pauses, there's so many things that you could think about, even just in speech
Mhm.
alone.
Mhm.
And so, but I remember I actually got graded down because I was too animated. Like I
Mhm.
used too many body gestures and hand motions. And in that class, that was also just, again, like working on long gazes and like looking into people's eyes and how you in a room of let's say 30 people you're giving a speech to, how many people can you lock eyes with and connect with, because guess what, that one person is now way more impacted than when if you're just kind of like shifting back and forth.
Yeah.
That one person feels like you were talking to them, and guess what, you did that 10 other times. So I just remember that speech class shaping my understanding again of the nonverbal cues. And because I feel like I had the body motion and hands, because that's how I was born down, I was like, what else am I going to focus on?
Mhm.
And eye contact was one of them. And then secondarily, I think maybe in college was the next pivotal moment where, again, I took some of those like Psych 101 classes. And then I kind of got into that world, sociology, anthropology, like all the ologies of like the softer sciences. And something I remember looking at other cultures and them of understanding again just gestures and body gestures and how much weight they held,
Mhm.
meaning like they didn't need to say a word, like they would just do a motion,
Yeah.
and that was incredibly like telling of that person's what they were trying to communicate without a word. They just gave like a body. And so there's like that next little like pip, plant seed. Okay, I remember eighth grade, like all these things. And now, oh, interesting. The rest of the world is actually using all these nonverbal cues to have incredible power
Yeah.
over what they're trying to express or emote. And so like that was maybe the next thing. And then lastly, I think I just started observing because I did study cultural anthropology and sociology. So in me, I'm very interested at how people interact.
Mhm.
And I just started watching, I think, in my own little, like, I don't know if it's a science project, but observationally, as I started moving myself in the professional world, yeah, the people that are nervous and feel very uncomfortable, those are all the people that will not look you in the eye.
Yeah.
And just even me sitting and like even watching peers or colleagues present, or we would be in a joint customer meeting. And of course, what do we look at? We see all these nonverbal cues. And that is showing like, ooh, this is not coming, off well.
Yeah.
And so I think that next like little step for me was just like, okay, what am I doing that is going to express that I have the utmost confidence in whatever I'm saying. And one of the easiest things for me was eye contact because,
Hmm.
again, I think anyone that I've ever seen that was presenting well, they were very proud of what they were sharing and they wanted people to see. And I always feel like, wait, we say even in our culture, like you're going to stare into the depths of their soul. Like
Yeah.
the eyes are the windows to people's souls. Like all these little sayings, well, they have truth and merit to them because I just think, again, if you take any interaction you've had and you're like looking at someone that's looking down or looking up or looking away, we even unconsciously have a bias
Hmm.
over those motions. Those are indicating something to us. And again,
Yeah.
there's these crazy experts that have all this behavioral focus of study, and they show like right, like they are watching what people are doing, and that's indicating something. You know, if
Yeah.
people are looking up to the right or left, like lying versus, anyways.
Yeah.
So I just think that there's so much power that maybe people don't even or they haven't given thought to.
Yeah.
Like what that challenge came up where you're like, okay, that is a goal that I want to work on, you
Yeah.
know, and I'm going to try to lock eyes with five strangers this week. Because guess what? It's freaking uncomfortable for a lot of people if you don't do it.
Yeah.
But every time we keep doing it, like, okay, a little more, a
Yeah.
little more, a little more. And now not so scary.
No, I love that answer, and the reason I asked it is because I am in the latter half, and I think you know this. It is an odd thing to think about for somebody to have a goal, right? It's similar to creating a network. A lot of people don't think about it, right? Most people, in my opinion, think people that are extroverts just have really wide networks, and that's not true. You actually have to work at it. You actually have to care about those people. You have to have those interactions. And you personally were the one that basically forced me to start making eye contact with people. And it is still challenging for me to this day. And it's really interesting because even last night when I was out at the business meeting, I'm out there and I'm trying to stare in people's eyes. And, I don't use the tips and the tricks that, some people recommend, stare at the space between people's eyes, right? Or look at their forehead or whatever. Like I really try to look at the eyes, but it is uncomfortable. And I can catch myself in those moments thinking, hey, just relax, right? You're making a connection. Um, and I think a lot of people unknowingly don't do that enough where they don't think about eye contact as being that greater connector, right? What represents them. And you have your presence, right? And I want to stick on the topic of presence, but your presence is, I think, very strongly represented by the eye contact that you give. So I think that's number one, very impressive. And number two, it's backed up by, for lack of a better term, something I think is like softness, right? It's like you are naturally authentic, and maybe that's what I'm pulling at here. But when you walk into a room with your humor, your eye contact, you have this caring piece that comes along with you that makes people instantly feel comfortable. And I'm curious if one, you recognize that, and number two, if you've been able to hone that to where you do recognize it and you can use that to help open up people when they might not have that same sense of humor, right? Or they might be, right? Like you've shared some interactions with me historically where, this one guy is supposed to be a super hard ass, and then by the end of the meeting, we're laughing and we're joking and we're having a good time, and he completely opened up to me, right? And that's not uncommon for you. So do you recognize the softness? Is that the right word, or is there something else that you do that conveys that to other people?
Well, I'll link it back to the original question, and that was the humor portion because they
Yeah.
go side by side in tandem. I would say, I mean, again, I'm very big on understanding origin and how do people get to places where they are. I grew up in a household that comedy was our love language slash like is our family bond.
Mhm.
Like both my parents were voted their high school class clowns. So naturally, if they're not birthing a clown, like, I'm clearly the milkman kid, but I was raised right where even in very tense situations slash uncomfortable situations, somehow humor, gets woven into it. And so for me, I normalize comedy and humor in my youth. So I very much recognize that was a go-to place to diffuse, right? Like there was just going to be jokes dropped or like practical pranks. Like, I mean, these things is what we grew up with in our household. So
Mhm.
I think about that, but then how does this translate to everyone else that, let's say, is not a humorous person? So for me, I would say that humor is probably my undetectable superpower because I default to that and I have learned a way to build it into almost all scenarios of my life where that's a differentiator for me. Like that is my go-to where I actually could, pardon my French, give two shits if I'm talking to C-suite of a large organization versus the neighbor down the street. Like, again, going back maybe to the authenticity, like that is who I am. That's what I like. And just because others don't like it, I've also reached a place in my life where I'm like, well, if you don't like it, like too bad, so sad. But like, I'm not gonna bend. I'm not gonna like mold that much where like that is just where that's where I'll anchor myself.
Mhm.
But for other people, to me, I think there's a lot of characteristics that could be default, like their default of differentiation slash authenticity. And it's just because I have humor, which most people globally like to laugh, like people
Yeah.
like to feel lightness. And so that's an easy characteristic for the masses to embrace.
Mhm.
I'd say the minor of the population would find it offensive, inappropriate, like the
Yeah.
majority. So I have an easy default characteristic. But for others, maybe it's you're the most technical person. Like you have an incredible technical aptitude and brain. And so like no matter what you bring authentically yourself, you're giving like techs and specs. Like you have all these crazy knowledge facts. Like that is your go-to. So you're weaving yourself into the conversation personally, professionally, all these things. Like we know like that's you and you own that. And it's so beautiful when you own it.
Yeah.
Um, maybe music. Like maybe you love music that dominates your life. That's how you grew up. That is such another global connector where it's like maybe you've immersed yourself into the world of music on the side. You can almost bring that into any and every conversation. But again, that's a safe spot, that's an anchor spot, that's a spot that you know so much about that opens you up.
Mhm.
And then inherently, like that opens up whoever you're talking with, right? Because they see the passion behind your eyes,
Yeah.
speaking back to eyes, but they feel that you really love that thing. And that would be a great overlay connector to any and everyone, and so I guess all I'm trying to say is that humor slash warmness might not be for everyone, but I think once you identify what that thing is for you, how do you weave that into any and every interaction you have? Because that's what's real, and people pick up on that
Mhm.
lights you up. Your eyes change, your energy changes, your body changes, right? When you're talking passionately about something you love so much, that then just opens up conversation that opens up like a new synapse that maybe you never thought you would have anything in common with that CFO. Well, you took a risk and a chance that you love that thing. You're going to talk about it, see, like throw it out there, and maybe that's your new bond. But
Mhm.
um, I would just say to really comb through and figure out if you haven't figured out like what is your thing,
Yeah.
and then don't stray away from it, no matter what environment or what interaction that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I really like that. That was something that I actually interacted with somebody yesterday. It was interesting because we it was a gentleman that I had met maybe once or twice in the office, and he came up and he shook my hand and hey, I know you, but I don't know you. Let's talk. And small talk still for me it can be a little bit uncomfortable, and I was trying to, I guess, ask some prodding questions. Without the humor, of course. And so it was interesting because he had something written on his sweatshirt, and I was like, "Oh, tell me a little bit more about this sweatshirt. Like, where did you get it?" And immediately he just like lit up. It was like, oh, my family's from New York and this is from Austin and we took this travel. And it was funny because I didn't really ask a deep question, but it just completely opened up the conversation and his entire body language just changed, right? It was like, hey, I'm here. Let's have a connection. Like you and I are making small talk. We both recognize this, but at the same time, I do want to learn more about you because I'm expecting to be here long term. There's not there's maybe not a larger business play. I don't need anything or want anything from you. And I think he sensed it in that moment. So it was kind of an interesting experience for me.
I love that. It's awesome.
Um, Share a little bit more about, because we've been talking about the salesy and CFOs and, maybe some business relationships, but you also do this very well with your social circles, and, your church groups and your mom groups that you're a part of. Obviously you are very experienced in larger networks, but if somebody is going to have kind of the same connections, deeper connections, if you will. When you want to go in and do life together, it's not a transactional relationship where it is in business, but if you're actually trying to do life long term or find deeper friend groups, like there's a lot of people that go out there and they just need to build their networks and they're trying to connect with people. Do you approach those in the same way? Do you approach them differently? Like how do you kind of start to understand where the deepness of a relationship goes? How you might be able to help somebody out or, have that drive that connection for a longer term relationship?
I definitely feel that there's similarities, and then I also feel that my personal relationships, of course, would look different than my professional ones. But the similarities, anyways, I would draw out a couple of things. One would be just persistence and consistency. And that can look a lot of ways to a lot of people. But for me, like, I feel incredibly grateful that I have had lifelong friendships dating back to honestly when I was in third grade, when I was 9 years old. Like, still, I'm not going to do the math out loud because then you know how old I am and I'm just turned 20. I mean, just whatever. But um, I still hold friendships from elementary school, like, as in, right, some of my best friends. And then I have met people as we've moved to new cities where I've kept in touch and still keep in touch. But even though there's geographic boundaries that are having a harder time to connect versus time zones versus life just being incredibly busy, the persistence is that I will just try to make sure it's like a mental note where, guess what? This week I'm going to reach out to three people, and maybe it's just a text message. Maybe it's a, hey, we need to set up our next coffee date. Hey, I'd love to get on the phone and catch up live.
Mhm.
But it being like, and if they don't answer, don't be upset about it because again, we're all in different seasons, we're all in different stages of life. So persistence. So go pursue again. Go try again in a month or 2 months or 3 months, and don't feel like, oh, I can't believe it blew up. I can't believe I didn't get a response. Because I think again, we're all in different places of our lives, but it's those friendships, it's those bonds, it's those connections that you look back and you're like, man, we have done a lot of life together. We've lived a lot of life together, and we've chosen to like do the ups and downs. And so,
Mhm.
and then like the consistency part is that I've got standing trips with friends that we will like ride or die until they happen. Like this moms group just formed essentially 6 years ago, but now once a year, every single year, we know the weekend after Easter, we are all leaving our families and we're going away for 3 days somewhere where we're deeply connecting. Like those trips are more foundational sometimes than, if you saw someone once a week because you're getting very
Mhm.
intentional time
Yeah.
and like the consistency of that trip where we all look forward to it. We know every year for until, we can't travel because we're too old. Like we've got this that we look forward to. We all just come together in the midst of the chaos to just clear it all out and be there for each other in deep ways.
Yeah.
So the persistence, the consistency, like I think those things translate to business, like how are you going to continue to build deeper bonds? How are you going to continue to show up and be top of mind for business? Like persistency, consistency, whatever. But some of the other things I think are just showing up. Again, I have too many examples in my life that I'm very grateful for that when I have hit my life's rock bottom or like one incredibly stormy season and just friends literally showing up at your doorstep they've dropped their worlds to be there for your world when you feel like everything is crashing around you.
Mm,
There's no like greater act of like love and friendship when it's not just about like the fun times and the travels, or like back when we didn't have responsibilities and we were in our 20s and like the hardest decision we had was where we're going to brunch. Like those times were amazing. But now also, right, as we've evolved into our relationships, friendships, is because people are choosing to like be there with you in the depths and the highs. And so I think from a personal level, I have found those groups of people that I'm doing the same thing. Like when the shit has hit their fan, I want to make sure that I am showing up with a dinner, love notes, or prayer verses, whatever that thing is, but like
mhm.
not shying away because it's hard and difficult.
Yeah,
Instead, like linking and holding hands, like even greater so in those hard times.
yeah,
And so I think there is just a multitude of kind of contributing factors that these deep relationships form if you're willing to put in the work. Because I think a lot of times people will just be like, man, this is like, ooh, like
yeah,
A, that's a very bad situation. I don't really like deal with it. Or B, like, man, this is a lot of work. Like just nowadays to schedule like a birthday lunch takes us like 3 months,
yeah,
6 reschedules.
yeah,
But in the day, like this is very important for us because if we want that continuity and the continuum of friendship for a long time, like we will continue to work no matter how hard it is. And I think everyone understands all incredible things in life take incredible amounts of hard work,
yeah,
and relationships are no different. But sometimes I think people default to like it should be easy. Like as friends, shouldn't this just be like seamless and easy? And I think people need to also just realize if you want those very deep, intimate relationships with friendships is not easy.
yeah.
It can be just as difficult as a marriage or I don't know, a career trajectory. Like to me, it's like still just as difficult. But then the outcome, of course, the upside is how incredible, when you've gone through all the hard stuff that you're walking out on the other side, knowing that, well, we're lifers, we'll be
Yeah.
there through it all.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a difference in acquaintances slash friends versus doing life with somebody. And I think we're going to save that topic for a different interview because there's a lot that you and I have intentionally done to build our networks, both independently and then collectively. But either way, it takes work, right? And it takes commitment. And that commitment piece, I do agree with you. I think is something that most people lack. They're just unwilling to put in the work with the expectation that everything is going to be fun. And going back to the presence and the communication that we were talking about earlier, I think that's the same thing, right? If you go into a business meeting or any relationship and you have an expectation of it is going to result in this and it doesn't happen, um, that can be dangerous because it's a very slippery slope versus going in without expectations, without ego, and saying, "Hey, I'm just here to make a connection." Right? If it results in a sale, or at least I can be friends with this person, or ultimately I'd like to do life, but I might have to date a few people to do life with them first. Right? They're different scenarios, but at least you're setting a successful baseline for yourself because you're trying to build it on connection, not with an end goal in mind.
Agreed.
So what, just kind of rounding this out, I don't know what I don't know, but what other, I guess, things do you thrive on when it comes to building a presence? When you recognize you have something, how can other people build presence? Are there things that you think about or things that you do that we haven't talked about? What questions should I be asking you that I haven't asked yet around those skill sets?
Hmm. Okay, well, I think I've been in a lot of situations where I might be showing up to a room of a couple hundred people or even 20. But one thing that I do, and I guess I've now formed into my own strategy, is I like to think of a stimulating question and just recycle that throughout the evening. So I'm not just like showing up and being like, where are you from? Let's hear. Do you like the Broncos? Do you like have a favorite food? Just like really surface level questions.
Yeah.
And ooh, insider tip, one of my favorite questions that I've come up with, is just what is the greatest thing that has happened to you in the last 6 months? Or
Mhm.
what's the best thing? Like, what's the greatest thing you've accomplished from like whatever 1 year ago to that date, right? And people kind of like stop in their tracks and they're like, whoa. Like, because people are just really used to kind of surface level, shoot the breeze talk. And so even in those scenarios, I try to come up with one question that will make people think,
Yeah.
that will make people stop in their tracks and be like, "Ooh, okay, like I guess I have to think, and like this is
Yeah.
gonna say a lot about me."
That's
And
really
then
good.
that like stems into something else. So that's just a like little insider love anchoring on an interesting question. Um, and let's think. What was the, oh, just other things?
Yeah. And the question thing, by the way, I'm glad you brought that up. That I have seen you do that in real time, and it's very impressive. Because you're not doing it in a sense of doing it to get attention, but what you end up doing, and it sounds like it's part of your strategy, which is why you do it. But what I see people doing is when they stop to think, that draws them in because their attention is on you, right? They're not saying something passive and looking around and not thinking about the response. It's like, oh, now I actually have to think. This is somebody asking a question because they want to learn something about me that's deep. Now I need to pay attention to her, and that is very strong from a presence and a relationship building POV. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Hmm, you're welcome. Yeah, I don't really have anything else outside of one thing that I do as well when I'm meeting a lot of people or when I'm trying to form new connections in a brand new place. It's hard when you're going in and you're trying to like get in some kind of depth with a lot of people at once. It's a lot to take in. And
Mhm.
so again, just like an insider track tip, whatever, is that I just like I do in business, I try to take notes on my phone. So right after I've met that person, I would be like, Nicole has 3 kids, super into running, like those couple like things that I see. And then the next time that I meet Nicole in like another event or the next meeting or whatever, like I just jog my memory too to remember like our conversation. And that's not because I'm not listening, but again, in those environments where there could be like a lot coming at you and you are asking a lot of questions, so you're capturing a lot of information, I want to try to remember that. And then when I bring that up in the secondary time, they're like, oh, wow, you remember that, and then that creates that deeper connection as well, which is like, wow, you did listen, you remembered, like you took the time. And so that was just something else that I've done a lot. And it could be as simple as like when I meet a neighbor and I capture, okay, I try to write down their kids' names, how old they are, where they come from. Like
Hmm.
I have all these notes in my phone under people's contact information, just so again, like they know that I want to know about them and that I cared to ask questions and I cared to remember, and so that would be another just like interesting insider tip is that I don't have this great Rolodex memory, like you think I do. Now you know my
Now
secrets,
I know your secrets.
I just try to take notes and I try
Yeah.
to read them because a
Yeah.
note's only as good as it is if you read it. So take the note and then remember it and be able to come into that next interaction with that little bit of knowledge as you're going in because it really changes people's perception and then that opens them up even more because now they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you're gonna ask me questions and you're caring to like actually listen.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are fantastic. And it's a good reminder. You've reminded me to do that for myself as well. Because recall can be challenging for a lot of people. So, um, it's amazing to me. We can be married for so long, and I can always learn so much from you. So I appreciate you spending the time to come on. And I do think, next time we're going to talk about the power of networks because it's something that you, again, and I have done intentionally, but a lot of what you're sharing when it is a presence, when you are representing yourself and you're trying to build these connections, ends up building lifetime and life-changing relationships that ultimately lead to specific things in your life. And they have definitely helped us redirect our life in certain ways. And I think there's so much importance in that, but it is intentional and it is something that people have to work on. And so, just kind of reiterating some of this stuff. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but one, kind of go into a room being humble and willing to build relationships, not thinking out the specific income or outcome, focus on eye contact, maybe be ready with a deeper question or at least a pre-scripted question that you can cycle in different ways to really build relationships, and then take notes with people. Really try to drive that authenticity, remember who they are, bring that up. Follow up is obviously really important. Is there anything I missed there that people can really focus on?
Oh, just the you did a great job of that recall. Hopefully you're taking notes. But I would say the only other little pinpoint through this whole thing was find your crutch, your safety net, your authentic go-to again. So mine was humor, but find that thing, own that thing, and don't stray off of it because you could get defined as that thing, which is really important because people start noticing you as like, man, that guy knows literally like every stat about X. And that could just be like your thing that I keep saying anchor, but you're anchoring it because
Mhm.
that's comfortable for you. And so
Yeah.
when you don't know where to turn, go to the place that you love to talk about because if people don't know about it, it's interesting, but if they know about it and it's just they see how incredibly excited and enticed and empowered and passionate you are, like they're drawn in because they read and feel your energy about that thing. So find
Absolutely.
that thing for yourself.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Good reminder. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Oh, well, you can find me. I'll give you your address. No, I'm joking. Don't do that. But of course, on all the socials, I am because of the humorous, the Snoop Mom, the Snoop Mom on Instagram. My business is fullbloom.mama on Instagram, and find me on Facebook as Bre Johnson. And otherwise, if you know Nate, then you know how to get in touch with
Find
me.
you.
And LinkedIn, and LinkedIn. I try to get on LinkedIn quite often as Bre Johnson, so I'd love to connect with any and everyone.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you for your time, honey. I appreciate these nuggets and this insight. I'm taking notes and I will make sure to go back and revisit some of this to incorporate it into my repertoire. So thank you.
Thanks, honey.
Bye.
Bye.
We are a community dedicated to growing people's lives one day, one action, and one thought at a time. And the big part of this is learning from others. So because of this, we've created a free Habitual Growth Facebook community where you can find interviews, additional resources, bonus content, and so much more support to help you along the way in your growth transformation. And the best part is it's all absolutely free at no cost to you. So if you're somebody who's wanting to make a change in your life, head over to the app or the Play Store and download the Habitual Growth app now for your free trial. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, you work for somebody else, or you're just determined to make changes in your own life. These principles and this process work for everybody. For more information about habitual growth or any questions we can answer for you, shoot us an email at info@habitualgrowth.com. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the next video, and until then, keep inspiring others to do more.